Hi, I'm James from Master Car Sales Hitchin. Today I'm going to do a buyer's guide for the Porsche 911 997. We get a lot of these cars in and I'm always asked what to look for or what not to look for on them. So I've got a couple of examples here that I'm going to walk around with you and show you what you should be looking for. Okay, so the 997 generation of 911s ran from late 2004 right up until 2012 when the 991 came in. They were originally launched as a Carrera and a Carrera S, which is what we've got here. We've got a Carrera Coupe and a Carrera S Cabriolet. The Carrera is a 3.6, the Carrera S is a 3.8. These are both second generation or Gen 2 models, as you'll probably hear mentioned. The Gen 2 was released in 2009. In our opinion, it's probably the one to go for. They just had quite a lot of modifications really that just made them much more desirable. To look at, the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 models were very similar. The main way you can distinguish the Gen 2 models is the rear lights have LEDs in them rather than just conventional halogen lights. Front bumpers are slightly different. It's really underneath where most of the changes were made. In terms of differences between the 3.6 and the 3.8, on paper there isn't an awful lot in it. The 3.6, this one, the Coupe, this is 345 brake horsepower and 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. The Carrera S is 385 brake horsepower and 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. So in the real world there's only 0.2 seconds between them. The S produces a bit more torque as well. I think it's 310 pound-foot as opposed to 288 pound-foot of torque, which really is just sort of the measure of acceleration. If you're really giving it a pasting, the Carrera S is probably slightly better, but in the real world you're not really going to notice much. With the Carrera S, you can just about make it out on my camera there. It is slightly wider at the tail end than the Carrera, but there's not an awful lot in it, to be fair. So in terms of which engine to go for, as I said, in the real world there's not an awful lot in it in terms of performance. I'd always buy an individual car rather than a variant. So if it was me, I wouldn't go out thinking, yep, I need to buy a Carrera S, because there are a lot of good Carrera examples out there. And to be honest with you, as is the case here, because it is a Porsche, everything is optional extra, and quite often you'll find a Carrera that has a higher specification than the Carrera S, which again is the case here. Now there are a number of reasons why you should probably go for a Gen 2 over a Gen 1. The Gen 2 has a lot of modifications to get rid of a lot of weak points of the Gen 1. The main thing being the engines. They actually went with direct fuel injection on both the 3.6 and the 3.8, which eliminated any issues with bore scoring, which was quite a well regarded issue with earlier 997s in the first generation. So the second generation in that respect has completely got rid of any issues with bore scoring. Another reason with the Gen 2s why they're probably a bit more exclusive than the Gen 1s is there's a lot more Gen 1s for sale than the Gen 2. Now the Gen 2 was essentially released in the midst of the financial crisis, so there were a lot less people buying brand new back then, which is represented really in sort of used values. You'll find typically Generation 2 models start from late £30,000. You can pick up a Gen 1 for much less money. Now with the Gen 2s as well, they had a much better navigation interface. Now as I said to you earlier, always buy on specification. Sat-nav wasn't standard on them, which is absolutely ridiculous for a car of this value, but there you go. The later ones have got all touchscreen interface. The Generation 1 had a really fiddly interface where you had to navigate it with buttons all around the screen, but this one's a lot more user-friendly. Same goes really for things like Bluetooth phone connectivity. That was never available in the first generation. In the first generation you had to make do with a slot where you could put a SIM card in. You do obviously get that in the Gen 2 as well, but obviously these do have Bluetooth. But again, that is optional extra, so make sure your car has got that. Another good optional extra to have is the Bose sound system, which is purely, well, obviously it doesn't affect performance on the vehicle, but it is nice to have, and it certainly does affect resale value. It's one of the questions we get asked a lot is, does it have Bose sound system, that you may take for granted, but again, this isn't standard. It's heated seats. We always find that's quite a good selling point. So it's always worth bearing in mind that, you know, it does help when it comes to sell it if it has got, you know, little things that you'd expect it to have. Probably the most popular optional extra that these cars can have is a Sport Chrono Pack. What that basically gives you is a lap timer on the dash here. It gives you Sport and Sport Plus modes down there as well, And also with this one, the PDK 7-speed transmission, it adjusts engine mapping when you push the sport button. Basically it just firms everything up, but it's quite a nice optional extra to have, and it is again a question that we get asked a lot, so it's always worth bearing in mind that, you know, if you've got a car with sport chrono pack, it is going to be a lot more appealing. Now, one thing I would say is never buy one of these based on mileage. Just because it's got a low mileage on it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good car. Certainly with the earlier ones that were prone to what's known as IMS bearing failure, if you Google it, I'm sure you'll read a lot of horror stories. That was a lot more prone in lower mileage cars. Again, the second generations didn't suffer with this at all, but it's certainly in the first generation it was fairly rife. This one is obviously a 2011 that's done 73,000 miles, which in Porsche terms I suppose is quite a lot. It certainly wouldn't put me off buying it. The only thing you need to bear in mind is service history. This one is obviously a 2011, so it has had 4 services in total because they're due every 2 years or 20,000 miles. So if you're looking at one that's got low mileage but it's sort of 6 or 7 years old, don't be surprised if it's only had 3 services, because they do have fairly long intervals on these. It is every 2 years or 20,000 miles rather than the conventional sort of year 12,000 mile in. So as I said, I would never really buy one of these based on the thoughts that, oh, you know, you want a Carrera S over a Carrera. I would always buy on each individual car because they are so customizable. You'd never find 2 911s the same. Everything is optional extras, so you'll find one that has a handful of optional extras, another one that's got slightly less optional extras. As I said, here we've got a standard 3.6 Carrera, but this one has got, I think, about £12,000 worth of optional extras. And we've got a Carrera S convertible here, which has got a lot less optional extras. It doesn't have the Sport Chrono pack, but it has got the PCM navigation. As we said, that is probably one of the most important things that it should have. The 997 Gen 2, like I said, they look a little bit sharper on the front end. They've got the LED running lights, as well as bi-xenon headlights as standard. As I touched on before, I would never buy an individual car based on whether it being a Carrera S or a Carrera. I would always take each car into account. So like I said, you can get a very highly spec Carrera, which we have here, or a Carrera S, which has got slightly less options, like it hasn't got the Sport Chrono pack. But, you know, in my honest opinion, the Carrera is the better one to go for, purely because of the optional extras it's got. They are a very customizable car. Like I said, you can get one that's got thousands and thousands and thousands of extras on it. This one's got about £11,000 worth. Things like the metal moonroof, things like the colour-coded interior, even silly things like on there, it's got Carrera embossed on the centre console. So although there are a lot of horror stories about common faults and, you know, the flaws of owning a Porsche, in our experience, to be honest with you, the Generation 2 911s, the 997, are fairly bulletproof. A lot of the niggles with the earlier Gen 1 cars, things like IMS bearing failures, bore scoring, they'd all been pretty much eliminated by the time the Gen 2 came out. These ones have both got the PDK twin clutch 7-speed automatic gearbox. If you are going to go for an automatic, it needs to be the PDK. Don't skimp and get a Tiptronic because, excuse my French, it is absolutely shit, and it will make you think that you've bought the wrong car, because I couldn't live with one as a Tiptronic personally. The PDK is a cracking gearbox. It's a twin clutch automatic. It actually changes gear as fast as a human can, which basically means that the 0 to 60 times for both the manual and the PDK are exactly the same, but the PDK is a lot smoother sort of around traffic. As a day-to-day car, I would say the PDK is probably the one to go for. So obviously you've got 7-speed in there. This one has also got the sports steering wheel, which is a must-have in my opinion as well, because you've got conventional paddles, you've got change down and change up. If I go to the other car, that's got the standard steering wheel, which is a bit pants in terms of the way the Tiptronic works, because you push it away from you to change up, pull it towards you to change down, and it's the same buttons on both sides. I just find it a bit fiddly personally. I'd much rather go for the standard flappy paddle. So yeah, to summarise, I would always recommend going for a Generation 2 997 over a Generation 1. It's always good to go for a nice neutral colour like your white or black. As you can see, we do like the white ones here. At the moment they seem to be very popular. White's obviously a very modern colour. I'd always stay away from, as nice as it is, Guards Red, as nice as it looks, we've always struggled to sell them, so I would always sort of avoid that colour if you can, purely because not everyone likes red. As I said, always buy on each individual car. Don't get caught up thinking, yes, I need a Carrera S over a Carrera, because there are a lot of good Carreras out there, including that one, and there are a lot of not so good Carrera S's. Not that that one's not good, that's a lovely car, but like I said, personally, I'd much rather have this Carrera personally, because it's got all the extras on it, and it is just a stunning car, particularly with the 19-inch wheels. Again, the Carrera S as standard's got the 19s, a slightly different design. If you like convertibles, fantastic, this one's another nice car. But like I said, always buy on each individual car. Don't think, yes, I want a Carrera, or yes, I want a Carrera S, because there are fantastic examples of both around. We get a really good turnover of 911s. You can always see what we've got in stock on our website, www.mastercarsales.co.uk, where both of these cars are currently featured, as well as several other Porsches. We've always got Caymans, Boxsters, later model 911s. As I said at the minute, the 997s are a great buy. The residuals of them are very good, and they seem to be holding at the minute. Certainly they have been for the last few years, their money. But it's just a case of finding a good one, which, like I said, you can find at Master Car Sales Hitchin, and we are in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. We're an RAC approved dealer, and we've been trading since 1989. Our website is www.mastercarsales.co.uk.